Hey, welcome back, friends and DGens. Glad to be here. Glad to have you joining us this evening. We've got some very special guests coming up here in just a moment. So, was talking with these guests backstage, and we're just talking about some future plans, current plans, and other things we got going on. And I had a light bulb moment, and it was like, oh shit, I've actually never had guests on my channel yet. So I am very privileged and very fortunate to bring the next couple of individuals on stream with me. Without further ado, let me introduce you to some of the local TA wizards. You can see I've got the green candles of gains behind me. So we're going to see what kind of positive news these individuals have for us for this upcoming market run through 24 and 25. First and foremost, let me introduce to you special guest, courtesy of the DGen Roundtable, the man, the myth, the legend, Agent J. Jay, what's going on, brother?
What is going on, my friend? Hey, I am very much excited to be here. Very excited to be a part of the first couple of special guests that we have on Twinkie Show here. I've been watching every single episode that you put out, and you put out some fantastic content, which is great compliment to guys like me who focus a lot more on the charts and pay a little bit less attention to the fundamentals. I always tell people that your attention and your time is finite, and so spend what time you can on the things that you're good at, and then the ones, the skills that you're not so good at, you should probably outsource those to other people who do a much better job than you, and you're definitely one of those guys. So whenever you put out a piece of news content out there, any fundamental analytics, I always pay attention, because okay, this is the stuff that I can't really pay attention to. Twinkie does a much better job on it than I do, and so I always like getting your input on those things, brother. But yeah, man, I'm honored to be here. Thanks for having me, and excited to get the stream going.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you very much. And 100%, right? Like, there's going to be certain things we gravitate towards. There's a limited number of hours in the day, but that's the power of community and power of connections. So, speaking of connections, I had the opportunity to do a number of co streams with this individual. We chat a lot in the background, bounce ideas off each other. He's the man with a plan, and probably the best smelling, masked up dude with an AK you will ever know in your life. I hear if you say Kalishnikov 3 times fast while looking in the mirror, he will wildly and suddenly appear. So, hey, man, it's Crypto Boogie. Boogie, how you doing, brother?
Twinkie, what's popping, dog? What's popping, man? Dude, that type of intro you gave me there, I want that on my tombstone, homie.
Tombstone.
Yeah, dude. That was pretty freaking genius, bro. Say Kalishnikov 3 times and I'll appear.
So, Boogie, how you doing these days, man?
Man, I'm alive. I'm glad to be here, bro. And I'm glad to be part of your stream. Agent J, shout out to you, man, for helping me out with the technical analysis. I always do believe, man, that we should be humble. But there is a time to be humble and there's a time to talk shit. And Jay did help me a lot with my technical analysis, bro. Shout out to Charlie as well. And I think, Twinkie, you're probably one of the better FA guys. And it's funny you mentioned that, Jay, because we do have a finite of time on this world. So we may as well specialize on what we're good at. And then we go ahead and freaking have somebody else that specializes in other aspects give us the data that we need. Freaking Twinkie, you are freaking red hot at that shit.
Yeah. Yeah. You guys know Gary Vee at all? You're like a big entrepreneur.
I wish I knew him personally, but I know who he is.
I've heard of him.
Yeah, so one of his biggest things is he says fuck working on your weaknesses, right? He's like focus on your strengths, and I agree with that like significantly, because if I spent too much time working on my weaknesses, it's time that I could spend elsewhere, right? So I outsource my weaknesses to people who do it way better than me, right? So I've got a lot of people. I got a lot of people. Boogie's one of them. You're one of them to cover my 6 every single time, so I can focus on the things that I'm good at. So.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, all right. I know I've had the opportunity to chat with both of you, let's say outside some of these streams, but for maybe those less familiar with you, let's talk a little bit about your kind of brief history in the crypto space. So, Agent J, since you're first on my screen, I'm going to start with you, man. Kind of what ultimately brought you into crypto, and at some point in time, you went from, hey, I'm kind of into crypto to, all right, let me kind of be on streams and talk about what I'm seeing. Yeah. So if you could just chart us through a little bit of that history.
Yeah, for sure. So I got into crypto because after I started my second business at probably it was like around the very tail end of 2021, just right after COVID happened, I told myself, well, okay, the business is doing good, making a lot more money than I was making in my regular 9 to 5. So I was trying to look for places to park the capital, right? Because even though the business is doing good financially, this is not going to get me out of the rat race. And so I was looking at a bunch of different asset classes. A lot of the traditional ones people are going to recognize, like real estate, S&P 500, IRAs, 401ks, that kind of stuff, right? But none of them really attracted me for two reasons in particular. Number one, either the returns were pitiful. I'm like, well, okay, inflation is just going to eat into these very small percentage gains over a span of time. And in the case of real estate at that time period, the barrier of entry seemed like extremely high to me, right? And so that's where crypto kind of comes into the story. I had been watching Fresh and Fit for a considerable period of time, and just lo and behold, Charlie and Miguel came on there promoting, as they always do every single quarter, their crypto mindset course. And this was at the very beginning of Q2 in 2022. And because I trusted the business acumen of both Fresh and Myron, I told myself, okay, both Charlie and Miguel present this information in a way that's very easy to understand, even though I knew nothing about crypto. They made it seem very attractive. The barrier of entry seemed really low. You only needed the bank account, sign up for a centralized exchange, onboard yourself that way. And the potential for upside was extremely high. And so that was what very much attracted me to it. And so I signed up for Q2 2022 and Q3 and Q4 and Q1 of 2023. And I've been in this space ever since. I do not see myself, even though I might potentially branch out into different asset classes, I don't see myself exiting crypto ever. I love this space. I love learning about it. I like talking about it. I love the innovation that's going on. I love the spirit, right? The value proposition of crypto and blockchain. I think it's the best asset class, and it is, as what would Captain Kirk say? The final frontier of finance. I think crypto is the final frontier of finance. I don't think anything is going to come along and usurp crypto from its throne. And so I'm here to say, and that's how I got into crypto, man. I've been here ever since. Now, talking about it and streaming about it, I met a bunch of the team from DGen Roundtable actually in the crypto mindset course. It was the very last one that I took. That was in Q1 of 2023. And at that time, we were already talking about all of the stuff that we talk about on stream already. We would get on calls, we would get on meetings and bounce ideas off of each other because each and every single one of us specialize in one or two things. So we gather all of the information together and create a cohesive investment thesis. And because all of us got so much value out of it, we thought to ourselves, why don't we just press the record button? Because I think other people will get value out of this too. And that was around June or July, I believe, of 2023. And we haven't stopped ever since. We've been churning out streams consistently every single week, and now multiple times every single week. And I don't see it slowing down either, because all of the members on our team are pretty much cut from the same cloth. We're in it for the long run. We love crypto. We don't see ourselves heavily investing in any other asset class besides this. And so that's how I got into the streaming gig. And hopefully this becomes another stream of revenue in the near future. But we do it because we like it, and we do it because we love helping people, right? It's the message of Charlie and Miguel is to pay it forward, and that's exactly what we're doing. We try to give as much free content as possible out there because we knew we were lost, running around like chickens without heads when we first started in this space. And we want to help alleviate and mitigate some of the mistakes that other people might potentially make because they don't have anybody to lean on, right? That's why we created the community, and that's why I think we've gotten traction within such a great amount of people. So that's the short and sweet of it. You're muted, my friend.
Now with 100% less mute, thank you, sir, is yeah, absolutely on that front. And certainly we've seen the growth of the DGen Roundtable. Obviously, YouTube channels popping off, Telegram's growing very solidly. I see a long list of who's who rolling through those doors. So kudos to you and the team over there. Boogie, how about yourself? What brought you into this space? And then at what point in time did you kind of graduate into the masked menace of YouTube in the crypto space?
I guess what brought me into the space, man, back in 2019. In 2019, I got into real estate. Now, I do subdividing of properties. In other words, I buy acreage. For example, I'll buy like 18 acres. I'll subdivide it into half-acre lots, and then I'll sell them so people can build their homes on it. I've explained this to people from Nevada and Florida, and they have no idea what I'm talking about. I'm assuming it's just a Texas thing. And I was in the process of getting everything started, but government moves slow, really slow. And I'm sure you guys are aware of that. You know what I'm saying? So in the process of getting everything approved from the local government of where I was setting that up, I was becoming very impatient. And I had extra capital left over, so I started looking at crypto, and that's when I made my first move on Shiba Inu. So, and it's actually my dad that taught me how to buy it. A boomer teaching a Gen Xer how to do things, bro. As far as crypto goes, that's not very common. So I first attempted buying it on OKX, and I found out you can't use OKX in the United States. And then I attempted using Binance USA, and I found out you can't use Binance USA in Texas. So I was stumped. I was like, where the hell can I get the Shiba Inu at? And then my dad came to visit me one time, and he told me, hey, Boogie, you know you can get it on freaking crypto.com, right? I'm like, what do you mean crypto.com? Like, I go to crypto.com. He goes, no, it's an actual app called crypto.com. So that was my first step into the crypto space. I bought some Shiba Inu, and I bought some freaking Ethereum. And for about 8 or 9 months, man, I was listening to Coin Bureau and BitBoy. And I didn't have any idea what the hell they were talking, man. They were talking about DeFi, and I didn't understand it. So I kept searching for people that could help me with crypto, bro, because I also came from the Dave Ramsey people, believe it or not, about investing and shit. So I was looking for an investor on crypto. So lo and behold, man, at the end of 2021, I think it was, bro. It was around, was it November? I think it was November or October, bro. They had already set up their Q4 crypto mindset course. And I was late about 2 weeks. I had seen an old stream from Fresh and Fit. So after that, I went ahead and they finished their course. I went ahead and I contacted Miguel, and I got a consultation. He taught me how to use Spooky Swap. And after that, bro, it was freaking, dude, I was it. I started taking off real hard into crypto. And I was like, dude, I'm a pretty busy person with my regular job plus my real estate. So I was like, I need to learn something in this space that I can do on the go. So I thought, hey, man, I'll follow Charlie's footsteps and do technical analysis. And I got Charlie for a consultation. He taught me how to do TA. Then I followed up with Agent J to sharpen it up a little bit more. And then I listened to EJ's A1 Crypto, and hence freaking Crypto Boogie was born, man.
Nice, very nice. And so you got all that going for you. When did you decide to throw the switch and say, hey, I'm going to start streaming?
Talking to Miguel, becoming closer with Miguel. I decided, and listening to Fresh and Fit, listening to Kevin Samuels. Kevin Samuels did say a lot that it's important for men to have a good amount of social status, also financial status. So I was like, why not both? You know what I'm saying? And then I add the element of freaking weapons, but of course YouTube doesn't like that shit. So freaking being a very freaking energetic individual, I'm also into fragrance. So there you go, man. You get AK-47s, fragrance, and crypto, bro. What else can you want? You know what I'm saying?
Sounds like you got the brand rocking. So on my front, obviously, after a few years of playing behind the scenes and kind of doing the Wizard of Oz thing, decided, what the hell, let's pull the trigger. Let's get this channel up and running. But prior to that, I was working my daytime gig, and I was actually traveling through Texas with some of my coworkers. I remember on the news, okay, Ethereum's busting in the news. I think it was like, peaking around 400. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to go back to my hotel room and find a way to buy some of this stuff right now. So basically, I bought the local top at around 400, rode that back down to 200, and then watched it go up, down, riding it through assorted, let's say, shorter to longer cycles. The company I was working for at that point in time got bought out in, again, 17, and then fast forward to like Android 19 really taken off, and just watching things get shut down. I said, okay, I've got my current real estate. I've got existing investments in the market. I've got 401k and all this other stuff. The velocity is not there for me. I need something that moves faster, and given a finite amount of time, and what skills do I have either that I can, let's say perhaps services I can sell to other people / certain tendencies or abilities I innately have. And I said, okay, let me just start sifting through YouTube. And then fast forward, like many other people, stumble across Miguel and Charlie on Fresh and Fit, and Myron showing some receipts. And I said, okay, I'll roll the dice and sign up for the course, and drinking from a fire hose, right? Like whatever I thought I had read, whatever I thought I knew, and not just the volume of information, but the overall progression through, okay, centralized exchanges to DeFi to charting, FA, TA, on chain. Okay, it's a lot of learning in a very compressed amount of time, but it saved me from making a boatload of mistakes that we still witness other people making. I did a stream earlier in the week. I had to help some poor soul and report to him, hey, you got smashed because you used a fake bridge. You got lazy. And that person was a vet of multiple courses too. So you know better. Sorry, bro. You know better. You can't get that kind of lazy when dealing with this stuff. Anyway, so fast forward to this year, finally decided, hey, let me throw my hat, I should say, into the ring and start doing some streaming. And look, if I get millions of subscribers, great. If I don't, it is what it is. One thing I will say is on the back end side of things, I've actually noticed more doors opening to me just by way of making appearances, putting my face on YouTube, engaging more on the Twitter community with other individuals and just making those connections. So while it may be, let's say, helpful to perhaps make some cash over the long haul through YouTube and other mechanisms, just the networking alone has been paying dividends. That little pro tip somebody heard, that conversation somebody had at a urinal, and all of a sudden that turns into, hey, Twinkie, check this thing out. Or, hey, Jay, check this thing out. Or, Boogie, what do you know about this? And just all of a sudden the information runs through some backdoor channels. All right. Let me acknowledge a few of our viewers this evening. So the man, the myth, the legend, Nellyville. Saw you in there, bro. Thanks for the fast comment. First on stream tonight. So I pulled this one up briefly earlier. I see my man Taint's in the house. The progression of anonymity. Bare face, then the hat, then the mask.
Chocolate Taint always got something, man.
Always. All right. So let's keep cruising right along. Did either of you guys catch any of the highlights or watch any of the fights last night for the Influencer Fight Club? BitBoy out there swinging for the fences. I will say, he looked a lot better than I expected for, let's say a crypto guy or an influencer. Did either of you happen to catch any of the highlights or watch the fights last night?
I saw snippets of it, Twinkie. Anybody got any idea how tall BitBoy is, bro? I'm assuming he's about freaking, 5'10" to 6 feet tall, give or take?
I would think so, so...
he was swinging pretty damn hard, man. That freaking cross that he connected on his opponent, bro.
Yeah, and he got dropped in the first round too. So kudos to him for getting back up, because I think a lot of people, the first time they're going to get hit like that, they're going to sit there and say no more, no mas. But
yeah, man. Cryptos R Us was there hosting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, George was there for sure. And I guess he must have some sort of ties, or maybe it's one of his pet projects, the Influencer Fight Club. I will say a lot of the other fights were, quite frankly, Bush League and would never be sanctioned by any reputable athletic commission. There were some that were just really tough to watch. It were just a complete one-sided beating. But kudos to BitBoy and More Light for truthfully putting on one of the best fights of the evening. So along those lines, let me quickly pull this up over here.
We need to see Richard Hart do some of that shit, bro. Richard Hart in the ring would be gangster, bro.
And... like it or not, that is what peak male performance looks like. So it doesn't matter what you have to say. And you know what, man? Kudos to him. He got in there, went into a full contact sport, got the W in it, right? And in the grand scheme of things, people are saying, oh, they look winded out there. I don't think people realize this was in Mexico City, where the elevation is a bit more substantial than most people in the U.S. are going to be used to dealing with. Right, just to put some stuff in perspective. So I'm let's say, within driving distance of Boston. So I'm definitely closer to the sea level side of things. I have spent a bit of time in Denver, and it is something I think that can be a little stealthy and invisible as far as dealing with elevation. I can't imagine going into a full contact sport where somebody's going to try to punch my dome in at 7,300 feet, especially for a guy who really has, as far as I could tell, no real background in any sort of combat sports. And, he definitely put a lot of time in handling some athletic training and preparing for this. Yeah, man, kudos to him. A lot of people can talk shit about that, but at the end of the day, he got in there and made it happen.
Yep. And I bet these people didn't even consider that they were going to fight in a significantly different altitude. So they're not they probably didn't even think to prep for that kind of environment, like how some athletes would, right? If they know that they're going to be competing in a place that's in a higher elevation than where they're used to competing at, they would train for it, right? So that's probably not something that they consider. So kudos to them, and kudos to BitBoy and who like all these other fighters. I know you mentioned earlier that some of the fights were a little bit awkward to watch, but look, anybody who has the cojones to jump into the ring and fight another man, they have my respect. And the reason for that is these people don't have to do this kind of shit, right? They make enough money. Like I'm sure even though BitBoy is going through some litigation right now, he's still making enough money, right? He doesn't have to do this kind of stuff. But to go inside the ring and fight with another dude who's also trying to knock you the hell out, put yourself at risk to that degree, right? That's a respectable thing to do, because most people wouldn't, right? So like fighters, they have a lot of respect and from me because of that, right? They're literally risking life and limb in order to compete in their sport. So
Not to mention, bro, when you're brand new to the ring, bro, you can get knocked out, bro, in an ugly fashion, dude, and then
mhm,
they'll freaking meme the fuck out of it. You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
So
yeah,
that's a risk in itself as well, bro.
yep,
Dude, I know a lot of people would love to try to knock Richard Hart out, bro, in one of those combat sports, dude. You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
But watch him win and then talk some more shit. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
you're
that'd
right,
be
bro.
the
It's
icing on
like
the cake.
you risk social humiliation and you risk death. So double whammy. Not easy.
You know what though? That's some I think like a really Western thing. For anyone who's watched something like MMA from overseas, particularly for one fighting championship or Pride, there was the audience definitely had a lot more respect for the fighter. Win, lose, or draw. If you went out there and did your best, you still had the respect of the audience and the spectator. I'd say that's a very U.S. thing where it's like, get this trash can out of here. You just got crushed. Very, very intriguing to watch. So we'll see if we see more folks from the crypto space dipping their toes into assorted combat sports.
You were telling me I saw Crypto Grady fighting a little bit. Crypto Grady, I think he's one of um, George's. I don't want to say employee, but I think George represents him, and he does have his own YouTube channel. He's big on DeFi Kingdoms, and I think he got smoked last night.
Yeah, he came out wearing a DeFi Kingdoms shirt, and I don't know if it was altitude or if he was intoxicated, but it was that fight was something. Yeah, he did
You,
not have the best time ever out there.
you got to go train in Big Bear, California, bro, before you go to a place like Mexico City. Speaking of Mexico City, the pollution there's really bad. My father has really bad sinuses, bro, so he can't even step close to Mexico City or he'll get really sick. Not to mention that, bro. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah, air quality plus altitude plus the adrenaline dump. Anyone who's ever tried any sort of like high pressure, high skill type thing, first time, the nerves that you like, it's definitely a factor. But kudos to all of the combatants last night. There was one hilarious thing where what was it one of the guys from like Altcoin Daily or something like that?
Oh, I
One of the
saw
fellas
that.
was grabbing the host, and the host turns around and is like, "Seriously, get the fuck off me." I know the host was what's his name, Robin Black, I believe. He was in a Canadian band, and as I recall, had some like drug and alcohol substance abuse issues. Ended up with some seizures. That was his big wake up call. Was like, all right, I'm getting cleaning my life up. Embraced jujitsu, MMA, and so he's been training for some period of time. I was like, oh, this dude is just gonna get murdered if he keeps putting his hands on the host. So that was pretty entertaining. I got a good chuckle out of that. Anyway, speaking of some crypto stuff, I know we've got some folks rolling through the chat and they're saying, all right, enough about the damn fighting and the combat and whatever else. Talk to me about when numbers go up. So to that end, let's segue over to some background information on some of the different tokens we all like to look at, maybe a hidden opportunity or a gem or two, or at least some things to ponder. So on the Bitcoin side of things, since as Bitcoin goes, so too does the rest of the market tend to go. I was talking earlier on my stream this afternoon about the euro relative to Bitcoin, and for the duration of the euro versus strength of Bitcoin, let me pull this up. You can see the euro has lost 99.5% of its value versus Bitcoin in less than 10 years, right? And so we can talk about different fiat currencies, but I think the the chart tells the story right there. Like, you don't need any TA wizardry on this one. It's pretty damning. And this is, of course, after the ECB was trying to report here on how Bitcoin is a scam, it's an investment opportunity, it's costly, slow, it's inconvenient, it is used for nefarious purposes. Never mind all of the terrible things that have been done using euros with drug trafficking, arms deals, and the like, and same thing for the US dollars and other assorted fiat currencies around the world. Any thoughts on this one, gentlemen, with the ECB trying to claim the superiority of the euro over Bitcoin here?
All these big entities always talk shit, bro. They always do that shit. From governments to freaking big corporations, they always talk shit about freaking crypto. But if you look at the freaking on-chain data, bro, you can see that they themselves are clearly buying, dude, or referring some of those items to their high-end clients.
Yeah, for sure. One of the things I was thinking of here is many times, we think about things in dollar amounts, and kudos for some of the folks who trained us. I know up here in my state, there's a possibility to buy real estate using Bitcoin and potentially a few other cryptocurrencies on that front. And so many times when we think of things, we just think of it in terms of the US dollars, but it doesn't ever click over like, hey, that's effectively a ratio. And so one of the things Charlie would tell us is, hey, also look at your portfolio in terms of quantity or amount of Bitcoin or quantity or amount of Ethereum, because I personally can potentially see a future where we potentially change the denomination of how we handle some things. Mm-hmm. Jay, you got any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I think anybody who's trying to make the argument that the euro is better than Bitcoin obviously doesn't know how to look at a chart, because from the very simple chart that you have presented to us here, that looks like it's down and to the right for a very long time, as opposed to Bitcoin that is up and to the right. And like this gentleman here mentioned, over 90% of Bitcoin's trading days have been spent in profit. So you can't say the very same thing about the euro or any other currency for that matter. That's why a lot of countries like Argentina are transitioning to Bitcoin, because they know that it is, like I mentioned earlier, this is the final frontier of finance. So yeah, I am not surprised that some people are trying to defend their currency. Obviously, you have to play for your own team, but it's just going to be a matter of time. Just a matter of time.
Speaking of which, didn't Donald Trump recently come out as somewhat bullish or at least neutral for Bitcoin?
He said he doesn't mind it.
Yeah, it's a reversal from some of his prior statements.
Yeah, man.
So I think some of that has to do with
boomers waking up.
Yeah, Vivek Ramaswamy, let's say, I think is bending his ear on some of those different benefits. Mm-hmm. I have, let's say, an acquaintance I've met locally who has some connections to Vivek on that one. Yeah, I definitely think that's partially the Vivek influence. Also, whatever Trump may have had to say about Bitcoin previously, I would like to point out the man has had multiple series of NFTs. So exactly. Look, if it works, I think he'll get behind it, especially if that's what the American people decide they want. One thing I do appreciate is that Trump has said absolutely no CBDC as long as he can handle that and stop it. Mm-hmm. Let's see. We got a few other folks rolling through the chat. So I'm going to assume that's Jorge versus George with a G. I read it in chat. You just never know sometimes how you're going to pronounce it. We got Cassie Kelly coming through. Nate back for round 2. Appreciate the support. One entity, but 3 of them. The perfect trinity. Hey, that's why we got Adobo, Tamales, and Soju on the title this week.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, I'm excited, man. I don't know if you guys heard, but a few of the names that Trump dropped for potential VPs, one of them was Vivek, the other one was Ron DeSantis. I would like Vivek better. I think Vivek is a better speaker. I think he's more charismatic. I think he checks off some of the intersectional boxes that some of the people from the left might jump onto. I think this DeSantis is also a good pick, but my gosh, did he get creamed during the primaries, man? My goodness, he's not as good on his feet as some of the other candidates. Certainly not as good as Trump. Certainly not as good as Vivek, man. He gets flustered too easily.
Yeah, I concur, man. I think Vivek would be a great option because I think Ron DeSantis, I think he's a late or an early Gen Xer, bro. But Vivek, he's close to the Gen Xers, bro. I think he was born in the 80s or in the mid 80s, if anything, dude. And I think he's still got that balance between analog and digital. You know what I'm saying? And he's open to ideas of what the younger generations are saying, which the boomers don't really want to change their minds on. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. And he's an absolute chad of a freaking entrepreneur, bro. That's one of the things that really resonated with me about Donald Trump, because he's an entrepreneur. One of the things that my mom told me when the elections in 2016 were going on, she said the reason why she voted for Trump was because he was going to run the country like he ran his businesses, right? And obviously the guy became a multi-millionaire, billionaire. And so if anybody was going to fix the financial mess that the United States inevitably digs itself into deeper and deeper and deeper holes every single year, then the person who's going to have a pretty good chance of doing that was going to be Donald Trump, right? So that really resonated with me, because he's going to treat the finance of the United States like a business, and he wants that business to succeed. And I think Vivek is probably going to be cut from the same cloth, because that guy's been an entrepreneur like for forever before he took a few steps into politics. So
Jay, if you don't mind me asking, man, I could tell you how the Mexican community feels. Well, not all the Mexican community, but how does the Filipino community feel about somebody like Donald Trump?
Depending on most Filipinos, if they were born and raised here, right? For example, most of the Filipinos that I grew up with in Jersey, I guarantee you, bro, they're like raging liberals. I guarantee you, just by virtue of being raised in Jersey City, New Jersey.
Yeah.
But if you were born and raised in the Philippines, came here to the United States, right? Saw exactly how difficult your parents as immigrants had to, well, one, start over, right? Because it didn't matter if you were a Chad doctor in the Philippines. If you moved here to America, you had to start up from ground zero. So watching my parents start from zero again and build a life and business back up for themselves. If you're that kind of, if you're basically from the Philippines and you immigrated from the Philippines, you're probably going to lean more towards the conservative side, just because of how differently you were raised, right? If you were raised in the Philippines, you're probably going to be a little bit more conservative, versus if you were raised here in the United States and you have a lot of Western culture ingrained in you, you're probably going to be voting a lot more liberal, in which case you're not going to like Trump very much. Or, well, if you're a classical liberal, you're probably going to like him. If you're a raging lefty liberal, you're probably not going to like him.
Yeah, I concur. I have seen over the years, man, over the past few years, the recent ones, ever since Donald Trump came into office, bro, when he started saying the terms drill, baby, drill, a lot of the Mexican community started liking him a lot more, because a lot of the Mexican community works in the oil fields, bro. And I think a lot of them changed their old mindset of Democrat. I've heard this amongst my parents, and I've heard this amongst people in the Libra Initiative who actually run political stats. And it turns out that Mexicans by nature are very conservative, but we love welfare. So they were torn between the two, dudes. But as of recent, the things that Trump did for the Hispanic community, bro, as far as opening up a shitload of jobs and stuff like that, transitioning jobs from China to Mexico, bro, I think a lot of them have turned conservative. Certain parts of Texas that were usually blue, controlled by Latinos, has as of recent turned red.
Yeah, makes sense, man. You give a guy the opportunity to show the world exactly what he is and what he's made of. You're gonna sway a lot of voters your way, right? And I think even though he might not be the most eloquent speaker out there, I think by virtue of his actions, people resonate with Trump a lot more, because he's not a snake in the grass like traditional politicians usually are.
Yeah, I agree, man. As you stated, bro, he's not a very intellectual person when he speaks. And I think that resonates a lot with us minorities and the regular Americans, the blue collar workers and stuff like that, dude. And I think that's why he got a lot of the vote. A lot of the intellectual people, bro, especially the people that came out of Berkeley University and stuff like that, usually tend to speak in a condescending manner to people that were freaking, they're not as educated as them, but they don't realize that we run the infrastructure. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, he doesn't look he doesn't look down his nose at people. Trump has a very extensive history of always being present with his employees from the very top to the very bottom, which is why a lot of the blue collar workers resonate with him, right? Like you mentioned, they resonate with him because he brought a lot of like heavy labor blue collar jobs back here to the United States, to Mexico, from other places in the world. And so, yeah, people are going to resonate with that, man. So, yeah, actions speak louder than words. And a lot of these politicians, they're all air. They're all hot air, right? Very little action.
I concur, man. I concur.
And he's the only guy, as far as I know, as far as the president, had his net worth decline
Mm-hmm.
post-presidency.
Yep.
And also, I'd like to point out, people tend to forget, for decades, he was a New York Democrat. So what changed? And I'll
The
leave this
values.
little values. And we can talk about the Overton window and the like. Nonetheless, Boogie, Jay, myself, we couldn't withstand realistically that legal onslaught, right? And so how much of it, not just that, is a kudos to him for having the balls to stand up and fight against it. And people can deliberate, whatever they feel about him individually. It takes a lot of guts, and a massive hemorrhaging of funds on his side of things. The concern I have is I think that onslaught is somewhat also to serve as a deterrent for any other future outsider. So it's going to be mighty interesting times going in the back stretch of this year, election season and the like. But one good news, they can't turn off crypto. So coming back around to some of this stuff, Boogie, I need you to start, warming up those fingers to take a look at a chart here. So one of the other things I've been thinking about here, and kudos to Sailor Moon, Michael Saylor, for some of his talk on this stuff, is Bitcoin's appeal as a hedge against ongoing inflationary pressures is increasing. And we just showed a moment ago, 99.5% down to the right, like one of miserable chart for the euro versus Bitcoin. But it's not just the euro, right? It's the US dollar, it's other fiat currencies. I think the value of Bitcoin is, aside from, there's finite supply, but it is divisible. We could talk about triple ledger, having things on chain. It's effectively a giant encapsulation of economic energy. And so as they print more dollars, regardless of how it ultimately gets calculated, Bitcoin has the ability to encompass that. And we can talk about the benefits of the asset class. It's liquid, it's fluid, and we can move it around. It's 24/7, 365. And like at the end of the day, I do foresee us in a world, and maybe it's not Bitcoin, but the underlying denominator for calculating the values of things will change. Anyway, Boogie, my man, you got a chart warmed up for us?
Sure do. Let me go ahead and present that chart if you cats don't mind. I've got two Bitcoin charts I want to show you cats. One on the daily and then one on the weekly. Let's hit up the first one on the daily. Here we go. Current value of Bitcoin's at about 51,565. A couple days ago, I had a little meeting on my show with Sloth, and I told him that it's time for us to go ahead and turn as we approach the 30-day portion of the 60-day cycle. And if we take our measuring tool, currently we are at about on UTC time, we're about what day is this? 33. And today's time is 32. We started really dipping here at about the 30-day cycle, or about the 30-day portion of the 60-day cycle on average. And it does seem like we're doing a little bit of a rounding top. I did draw up this line here as a small area of support because we did have two candles print on the same shoulder side, and that was on February 12th and February 13th. So if we do continue to the downside, it may be that we will stop here at this price point of about $50,000 flat, or 50,143, and continue to progress downwards to about 48,447 ballpark. I'm hoping, of course, that we do compromise these candles over here and we revisit the small areas of support at about 45 to about 44,765, because it gives us more time to buy. Now, I know a lot of cats want to go ahead and put into the market, or they want to go ahead and freaking watch their bags pump. But any chance there is to be a bear, I'm all for that. Of course, eventually we do have to turn to become a bull. And I think the reason for that is because I never really got to experience, and I'm sure you can agree with me on this, Twinkie, about taking profits, bro, in a bull market. So I've developed somewhat of a euphoria whenever things go to the downside. We hit the markers that I mentioned and I buy. I get a solid dopamine hit from that shit. You know what I'm saying? So on the 60-day cycle, when we could possibly max out would be around March 23rd. give or take, depending on the cycle. Now, if we start dipping around day 45, that'll be March 8th, give or take. Now, there is another chart I wanted to show you, cats, but first let me activate the EMA ribbon on this bad boy. And you could see that we also have an area of support at about 49,610. We are seeing the EMA ribbon spread out, so that means we'll probably get volatility on the price action, if anything. Let's go over to the other chart I wanted to show you, cats. So I'm going to pull this sucker back. And present my other Bitcoin chart. And this sucker should be on the weekly. Now, I originally had this Elliott wave cycle within the symmetrical triangle on the weekly at about down here. But for the sake of this show, I went ahead and I pulled it up. So if you take portion 3 of the Elliott wave cycle, 2 to 3 is supposed to be the most bullish. But it may be that we're coming to the downside, revisiting this Fibonacci area of about 40,000 flat, because that'll complete the 4th portion of the Elliott wave cycle. Or what could happen, another option, is if we pull this sucker up all the way to the all-time high, which was at approximately 68,000 or 69,000, and then we would bring this Elliott wave cycle to up over here and then push this up to an unknown area. We don't know where that exactly is going to be because we've never gone above 69,000, but the 4 to 5 should be smaller than the 2 to 3. What do you think about this opinion, Jay, if you don't mind me asking?
So I personally think I've been pretty open about my thoughts on where Bitcoin is going to head. I still do have some bearish scenarios that could play out, but at the moment, I don't think Bitcoin is showing any significant weakness across any time frame. We are starting to see some divergences, of course. However, locally and across larger time frames, whether that's on the daily, weekly, or monthly, you're not seeing any sign of significant weakness, right? And so right now, I'm leaning a bit more heavily towards potential upside within the short term before finally getting into the halving and the inevitable dip. I spoke about this in the chat the other day. Whether we get a dip is not the question. The question is the severity of the dip. And that's going to be determined by if we get a right translated or a left translated 60-day cycle for Bitcoin, right? And as it currently stands, like I mentioned, all of the indicators I'm watching tell me that Bitcoin is not showing any sign of weakness, significant weakness at the moment, right? If you pull it, like if you take a look at the Bollinger Bands, the price is pushing the Bollinger Bands to the upside, not showing any big sign of weakness. We found support at the 10-day moving average, which is your most sensitive moving average, and we haven't broken past down there. The bears, despite their best efforts, have not managed to push Bitcoin back down to $50,000. And so taking all of that into consideration, it's very difficult for me to believe that we are going to go back to anywhere between $30,000 to $35,000 for Bitcoin when the bears can't even crack below $50,000. Now, I do expect some downside, like I spoke about earlier. I think once we lose $50,000, the next logical area of support is going to be, like you mentioned, $49,000 area, because we have a prior cycle high there. We have some fibs lining up there. So you have horizontals, you have fibs, and you have the cycle high serving as support. My most bearish scenario, we go back down and revisit around $36,000, right? I spoke about this in stream multiple times, that it could be an expanding flat for that next Elliott wave pattern, which is the most common flat pattern, right? Which would bring us down to around $36,000 Bitcoin. More realistically, though, it looks like we're probably not going to touch anywhere below $40,000. And so if my super duper bear scenario of 35,897 exact doesn't play out, my next target area, if $49,000 were to be lost, is 42,458. That is the corrective patterns that I am currently looking at the moment. But once again, we cross that bridge when we get there. And currently, I see no weakness locally from Bitcoin.
Now, do you believe the 60-day cycle? Do you think we're going to go for an extended 60-day cycle as we approach freaking the Bitcoin halving, in your opinion?
Not sure, to be quite honest with you, Boogie. All I know is we're gonna get a dip regardless, right?
Cool.
I know that on average we get 35 days before the halving when we get a dip, which lines up perfectly with the end of the 60-day cycle. So whether we get an extended one or not, I think is yet to be determined. If we get a right translated cycle, I think there's a potential to extend the cycle a little bit longer, but that's going to depend on where people start to take profits, right? I think $55,000 is the last bastion of resistance. Well, one of the last bastions of resistance for the bears. So you expect to see some heavy profit taking there. So who knows, man? We might get an extended one, we might not, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there.
And speaking of Bitcoin, can you show us what you think about ETH, man? I want to see where you're at on ETH. I'm extremely bullish on ETH, and I think that once ETH start running pretty hard, bro, I do think the Pulse Chain ecosystem, along with the Hex ecosystem, is going to run hard with it.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I am actually a little bit more bullish on Ethereum right now than I am on Bitcoin. Usually it's the opposite, right? Ethereum usually follows Bitcoin, but if I can go ahead and show you guys my screen here, I can let you know why that is. Let me know if you guys can see that.
We have it, and it's up.
Wonderful. So whenever I do my technicals, I always tell folks I always like to get my mind frame correct. So I always zoom out and look at things from a 10,000 foot view, very high up in the air. This is Ethereum on its monthly chart. And as you can see, February has been a very, very, very good month for Ethereum. Right? We're coming up against resistance here, against the wick of this candle around $3,000, but it seems like Ethereum wants to keep running to the upside. If you were to take just a fib retracement from the very top of our all-time high to our bear market low, you could see that we are coming up on some horizontal resistance here for Ethereum at the 0.618 retracement at around $3,353. And so, sorry, $3,353, 33,000. It's a bit much. One day soon, though. But this is the next area of major resistance that I see for Ethereum. Once again, you have some fibs there, and you also have the very tops of these monthly candles serving as resistance. Now, if we go and take a look at the weekly chart, you can see that Ethereum has had 3 weeks of absolutely fantastic momentum, right? Engulfing candles and every single one of these weekly candles to the upside. And so on the weekly, on the monthly, we have significant support for Ethereum. Even if we have a red weekly close, the bears are going to have one hell of a time pushing the price down for Ethereum to get a red weekly close. You're going to have a lot of resistance on both the weekly, you're going to have a lot of support both on the weekly and the monthly candles to act as support for the price. You also have this long-term trend line here that it's fairly visible. You see, once we broke out of it, right, during the bear market, we have used and touched that trend line and used it as support multiple times. The only time we collapsed underneath it was during the wave 2 of the macro Elliott wave cycle, which makes sense. But once we have regained it, right, we are trying to build support above it again. If we go on to the daily, you could see here that I have Ethereum currently at day 33 of its cycle, just like with Bitcoin, and we have a high here on day 30. And because of how strong the price action has been for Ethereum, even though Bitcoin has been pulling back a few $1,000s over the past few days, Ethereum has had very little negative price action. And so I think that Ethereum has a lot more bullish momentum going forward, heading into the latter half of its 60-day cycle. If you turn on the Bollinger Bands here, I alluded to this when we were speaking about Bitcoin. If you can see here that Ethereum on the daily, pushing those Bollinger Bands to the upside, this orange line here is your 10-day moving average. I mentioned this once again. I mentioned this also when we were speaking about Bitcoin earlier, but your 10-day is one of your most sensitive moving averages, right? And so before I even consider any type of bearishness, I always tell people, have we broken below the 10-day moving average? And the answer is no, right? We came here and used it as support yesterday, and we bounced right back up. So there is absolutely no weakness here across your larger time frames, and even here on the daily, smaller time frames locally, you have no weakness on Ethereum. And if you take a look at here, right? You have this is looking like an impulse. This looks like a 1, 2, 3, trying to come in, 4 yet to come in, 5 yet to come in, right? And even if we were to be generous and do a retracement from the bottom of this wave 2 here, you can see that price has not even retraced to the 236 level, right? This is a minimum retracement that you would expect for price to come down to when you're heading down into a wave 2 or a wave 4. Right? And Ethereum hasn't even touched that yet. So I don't see Ethereum showing any kind of weakness across multiple time frames, right? Here's another thing. If we go down into the more degenerate time frames, which I like to do when I'm doing my Elliott wave analysis, let me turn off the Bollinger Bands here. Go to the 4-hour. If you bring up the RSI here, this is what got me really bullish. You have hidden bullish divergence here for Ethereum. What that means is you're getting a higher low on price here. If you could see, let me go ahead and draw a trend line there, right? You're getting a higher low on price, but a lower low on your momentum indicator. This is classic hidden bullish divergence. And as you can see, we're heading on the way up. So next week is going to be very interesting for Ethereum. I think that it still has room to run because of the aforementioned reasons that we've been speaking about. And I think 3,300 around there is where you're going to start getting some resistance and people starting to take profits, which I think is going to happen at the very latter half of this 60-day cycle for Ethereum and for Bitcoin. So I spoke about it. I spoke about it in the chat earlier. I think the latter half of this cycle is going to be a profit-taking opportunity. If that is something that you are planning to do, don't get cute with your bags, but it is going to be a profit-taking opportunity the latter half of this cycle before we head into an inevitable dip that always occurs before the halving. So those are my thoughts for Ethereum. Boogie, Twinkie, if you guys had any thoughts, I would like to hear them.
Yeah, so I think we're approaching, well, obviously that pre-halving period. Typically, there is some level of post-halving accumulation opportunities in the market. Let's say, aside from potential future price action, no chart goes up and to the right indefinitely. I want to call out a comment here Nate made. Nate, you're beating me to the punch, man, with some of my commentary tonight, which means, hey, great minds think alike and whatnot on that. So we've got that ETH ETF looming on the horizon, and I believe the SEC has a decision date on spot Ethereum ETFs in May on that one, at least for the first round of those. So we got a deadline looming on that front. I think right now, overall, ETH has a stronger narrative for the next few weeks to few months, in the sense that we've got the next upgrade scheduled for mainnet around March 13th. It's that Denkun upgrade, the L2 basically upgrade is what I'm going to call that. Additionally, if you look at, let's say, some other news that has been published surrounding the Ethereum performance over the last year or so, they generated about $2 billion in revenue throughout 2023. We've got that SEC decision and upgrade. It is a deflationary supply at this point in time. So overall, I believe more tailwinds for Ethereum, and certainly we can debate the timing around that. I know I mentioned on one of my earlier streams, as well as in a number of different chats, I have sold out of 80% of my Bitcoin holdings to rotate into alts to try to multiply some of those bags. Now, Jay, you mentioned not getting too cute with the bags. I am putting that into things I think are highly probable that have shown a certain level of strength and staying power. Obviously, I'm like many other people here, I'm into Pulse and Pulse X and some other things like that, and we'll be taking a look at those charts momentarily.
Yeah. Hey, Twinkie, if I could share one more Ethereum chart.
Of course.
You alluded to this earlier when people make the mistake of just looking at the dollar valuation of assets. So I'm going to actually show you guys why I think Ethereum is significantly stronger than Bitcoin at the moment. If I could share this chart right here. This is the ETH versus Bitcoin valuation.
Sure thing.
You guys see that here?
You good.
Right? You can see here, after finding support at the very bottom, which was a double bottom. Let me zoom out here on the daily so you could see it much better, right? We double bottomed here. Right? If you could see, this is around when the merge happened. Ethereum gained significantly against its Bitcoin pair and then started to fall. And the entirety of 2023, it has bled against its Bitcoin pair. A lot of analysts out there thought that Ethereum was going to keep bleeding against Bitcoin and inevitably lose this horizontal band of support, but we did not. We bounced off of there, and now Ethereum is trying to make higher lows against its Bitcoin pair once again. As you can see here, it is gaining against its Bitcoin pair, coming up against resistance here across this daily candle at around 0.05 of a Bitcoin. But if Ethereum can punch past this and reclaim this area of 0.06 of a Bitcoin, then it's off to the races. And because of the ETFs, like Nate mentioned in the chat, the upgrades that are coming to Ethereum, like you alluded to, the Denkun upgrade coming, I think this just keeps gaining against its Bitcoin pair. Obviously, Bitcoin is still going to have a higher valuation when it comes to the dollar amount, right? Especially with the halving occurring within mid-April to early May. However, I think because of this momentum that Ethereum is creating, I don't think this bleeds against its Bitcoin pair. I think it either keeps pace with Bitcoin and crab sideways or start gaining momentum against this pair even further, even though Bitcoin might have a higher valuation dollar-wise. So that's just something that I wanted to present because you made a very good point earlier that you should get into the habit of not just looking at assets against their dollar valuation. You should start getting used to looking at assets against their valuation with other asset classes, in this case Bitcoin, right? Because Bitcoin is what we care about. If you cannot outpace Bitcoin, then you have no business investing in that token or asset.
I concur with Agent J, but I do think the SEC will try to delay that freaking ETF as long as they can. For as long as
Agreed.
freaking what's the name of that one cat? I keep forgetting his name, man. Freaking the guy that's running
GG?
the SEC. Gary
GG.
Gensler.
Yep.
Yeah, man. I think he's going to delay it as far as possible. It may even be that they may have to file a lawsuit to get something squared away the same way they did with freaking Bitcoin. In my opinion.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. We'll see what ultimately comes of it, or if there's some sort of breaking precedent between now and then. Although I'm not holding my breath on that one. But speaking of the SEC and the trouble they like to induce, everyone's favorite government agency has been giving Richard Hart some grief and the like. So I think on the SEC Richard Hart thread on that one, let's pivot over to the Pulse side of things, which a lot of us have been eyeballing and investing in over the last few years. So Boogie, since you're the man with a plan, what do you got for us on some Pulse info and some Pulse charts?
Let's see. I'm going to pull up the Pulse wrapped die chart, and this is where we're at right now. This is on the daily. Current value of freaking doggone Pulse chain is 3 zeros and a 1 2. We did freaking top out over here, and we started trending in a downward fashion. It could be we're finishing our 20-day cycle, if anything, and we would possibly be at about day 17. Let me go ahead and look at the chart. Low 1218. No, so I think yesterday was probably the last day that we'll probably be dipping before we start a new cycle. Again, I love being a bear. I'm hoping that Pulse chain comes and revisits this area of about 3 zeros and a 1 0. And I think that would be a good place to buy. Pulse chain, if it doesn't do that, it'll probably use this area as support where it's at right now and start moving to the upside, if anything. The area that we do have to compromise in the immediate time frame would be about 3 zeros and a 1 5. And that would be this top over here. Or I take that back, this top over here, which would be 3 zeros and a 1 5 1 1. That would be the next area we need to compromise. If we go to the weekly, the overall price that we do need to beat would be around this area over here, which would be at about 3 zeros and a 2883. And then we'll go into price discovery as to which way it may end up going. If we activate the MACD on this sucker, let me go and get that squared away for you cats. Now, the MACD does say that we're slightly bearish, and it may be that we'll continue the downside. I am hoping for that because I do want cheaper prices on all the freaking RH tokens. And I think that PHEX will probably follow in which way it's going, along with a lot of the altcoins within the Pulse chain ecosystem. And that covers Pulse chain monkeys.
Got it. So seems like exciting stuff. I know, Jay, we're going to pass to here in just a split second for some PulseX evaluation. All right, let's have a little fun, gaze into the crystal ball. Let's moon math a little bit. In your personal estimation, not financial advice, don't go do anything stupid out there, people. Let's just talk a little shit here or speculate for a minute. Reality or like, to what extent do you think Pulse Chain is gonna do a 10,000x between now and, let's say, end of 25, and 10,000x being off the bottom? I'll go. I asked the damn question, so I'll volunteer. I'll fall on my sword. Hey,
$1 billion.
we got
$1
Brown.
billion. Freaking
Scrooge McDuck out there. Honestly, I know some of the more conservative estimates in the Twitter sphere has had it like, okay, 10x, 30x. I think by the end of the 25, let's say 24, 25 shape up the way I want it to. I feel like 100x, 10,000x. I don't know. I can see a potential to reach 10,000x, but that's like, gazing out the telescope, checking the alignment of the planets, cross-checking my zodiac signs, what's in my 12th house. Is it a warm Tuesday with whatever else? What do you guys think, though?
I think Pulse Chain could probably get up to 4 cents, bro, depending on which way the market conditions are, bro. If Donald Trump is reelected, bro, I think the following day after he's reelected, we're going to have a repeat of what happened in 2016? The freaking entire market rallied, bro. And then especially all the Bitcoin people are going to be leaning on all his comments as to how bullish he is, or how neutral to bullish he is on Bitcoin. And I think that'll induce a freaking hype like we have never seen before. I think this hype's going to be bigger than the prior one.
Yeah, I agree. I think people have been hurt significantly by the last bear market. Wasn't exactly a walk in the park. Every single thing that they could have thrown against crypto, they did. You had Luna, you had Celsius, you had BlockFi, you had Three Arrows Capital, and then finally you had the Golden Boy, FTX, and Sam Bankman-Fried completely take a shit on everybody in the market. And then beginning of 2023, you had the threat of the contagion, right? Silicon Valley Bank, Silvergate, and others collapsing, USDC depegging. So it hasn't been a walk in the park. Even when we started transitioning to a more bullish trend, crypto has not had it easy. Then you throw on top of that all of the regulatory uncertainty and lawsuits and litigation that the SEC and GG have been throwing left and right and center at crypto. Hasn't it easy? So I think people are really scarred from the last bear market. And I think that's why you're getting people who have a lot more conservative price predictions for Pulse Chain and the rest of the RH tokens, right? 10x, 30x. I think 10,000x is certainly possible. I think 100x probably a minimum, because I think Richard Hart is going to win in his case. And after he wins his case, I think he's going to go back on the media circuit and wag his finger against people who doubted him and say his "I told you so's." And because now he is going to be exonerated in the eyes of the law, you're no longer going to have any ground to stand on if you still point your finger at him and call him a scammer. Right?
I can't wait till freaking BitBoy goes after freaking CoinMarketCap for not listing Hex where it needs to be at. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Right? Now these big exchange things are going to come, right?
Yeah, and BitBoy likes making noise, bro. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So taking all of that into consideration, I think once the naysayers have nothing left to say, once these coin listing sites finally properly list Hex and Pulse Chain and all of the other tokens at their proper place, right? You're not going to have a lot of barriers to entry left for people to come into Hex and into the ecosystem. And when you get that kind of mass exodus of people into the RH products, I think a 100x is the minimum that you're going to get, right? And that's coming from a very conservative investor, right? But I'm looking at the fundamentals here, right? I'm looking at the at what the news is going to be once he inevitably wins his case against the SEC, because he will. They don't have a case. It's built on clay and sand.
Yeah, with that stated on the case, man, I did run a number crunch as to how long it took the XRP case to go ahead and get its freaking case processed through the slow-ass government freaking courts. and I ran to a number of about early 2026, bro. If it did the same amount of days that XRP went through for its court case. So hopefully it gets dropped in October. If it gets dropped in October, bro, dude, I think you could possibly see a Pulse Chain coin come out on crypto.com, bro, because that's the first exchange that does it in the West.
Yeah, I think the one thing that Richard has going for him that the XRP folks didn't is Richard dotted all of his I's and crossed all of his T's, right? When it came to the messaging, the promoting, how he built his products. The SEC had a case against Ripple and XRP when they claimed that it was a potential security, right? But because of how careful Richard spun the narrative and presented his products to investors, right, to the community, I don't think he's going to have as difficult as a time that Ripple did dismissing his case with the SEC. I think that's one leg up that he has against the SEC in this case, because he was a lot more careful in how he launched those products.
Yeah,
I concur with you, Jay, but I do think that a lot of the freaking the SEC is used to this, and they know how to drag their feet, and I think they're very good at it. And I think that may be one of the options they do carry out, bro, with Richard Hart's case, if anything. And if they do that, I think we'll still be fine, but we just won't rally as hard. And I'm hoping that they do lose and they do drop the case, so we can end up killing it in the freaking market.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Fingers crossed. Speaking of Richard Hart products, I think we had one other Richard Hart product we wanted to take a look at tonight. So Jay, speaking of numbers go up and other tokens, we know we got a great token in the wings we want to talk about here. Also a Richard Hart product.
Yeah.
It's got a buy and burn.
Yes, sir.
It's arguably still very undervalued for what the potential futures hold. So why don't you tell us a little bit about our next token, sir?
Yeah. So let's go ahead and take a look at Pulse X. You know, the wonderful thing about Pulse X is its chart doesn't look too much different from Pulse Chain's chart. Once again, setting the frame here, 10,000 foot view up in the air. This is the monthly chart for Pulse X. And if you could see here, last month, we actually closed the highest monthly close that Pulse X has ever had, higher than that of the week that it released, right? So that's certainly bullish. If we go back here on the weekly chart, you can see Pulse X is trying to attempt a this is its first attempt at a potential Elliott wave sequence, right? You have a 1, 2, 3 trying to come in, 4, and 5 yet to come in, right? And so taking all of that into consideration, I think that Pulse X and Pulse Chain still have a lot of room to go. There was somebody in the Telegram chat a bit earlier this week who voiced their concern because it seemed like, even though Ethereum was rallying pretty hard, that Pulse X and the other RH tokens were going down. And I was very quick to mention to this person that Pulse X and Pulse Chain, go here on the daily chart, is still in a bullish uptrend, right? We're still making higher highs and higher lows. Same rules apply here, right? If we turn on the Bollinger Bands on the daily here, you can see that price is trying to find some support here at the very bottom of the Bollinger Bands. I bet it's going to find support there if price were to go down that low. Why? Because we have some horizontals here. Horizontal support, as mentioned prior, anytime you crack past a prior cycle high, if price were to come back down to and retest that prior cycle high, it's going to serve as some kind of strong support. Also take into consideration that we are in the wave 3 of an Elliott wave sequence, right? And so this looks like a 1, 2, 3, 4 trying to come in and 5 yet to come in to finish this larger wave 3 on a larger degree, right? And so because of how Ethereum has been behaving, because of the lack of weakness on both the Bitcoin and Ethereum charts, I think that not just the RH tokens, not just Pulse X, right, but other altcoins are still going to have a little bit more room to run. If Pulse X were to go down to the downside, I will give the bears their due. I'll give you some targets here. Let me clean this up just a little bit for you folks. Remove that. All right. This looks like a classic flat pattern, right? If we go down, let me go down into the more degenerate time frames here. Let me go to the 4-hour chart. Right, this looks like a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 wave impulse here to the downside, a 1, 2, 3, and then a C wave potentially coming in here. Right, and if we were to take our fib extension tool, if we were to head to the downside for Pulse X, I expect this area here of 4 zeros and a 2863 to be the target, right? Because that is the 1-for-1 extension of this entire move, which is a classic flat pattern, right? To the upside, though, first and foremost, we have to reclaim this cycle high here of about 4 zeros and a 6737. If we were to keep this bullish momentum going, and like I said, Pulse X is still on a very bullish momentum, my next targets for this local wave 5 are, let's see, here we go. Right, let's assume this is the bottom of our wave 4. My next target for Pulse X is this area here of 4 zeros and a 738, which lines up actually pretty nicely with this last chunk of resistance here before we try and start making our way to our prior all-time highs. Right? And once price cracks this last level of resistance here, there's not really a lot of resistance left to the upside. Okay? So keep an eye on Pulse X. If it goes down around the 4 zeros and a 28, and to the upside, you're looking at a minimum of 4 zeros and a 7638 for Pulse X, right? But you can look at any of the RH tokens and see that every single one of them have this Elliott wave pattern playing out, and they are still maintaining a very bullish trend.
In your opinion, there, Agent J, do you think Pulse X will outperform Pulse Chain, kind of the same way Uniswap outperformed Ethereum with the way it's running?
I think it certainly has the ability to do so, but that's not going to happen until the long run, right? I think Pulse X is going to play the long game because that buy and burn feature is going to take some time to ramp up. However, if you get the kind of adoption that we were talking about earlier, then you ramp up that buy and burn the same way that when the Ethereum network is being used significantly, you increase the amount of deflation that's going on with Ethereum, right? So it really depends. If we get the kind of mass adoption, then I think Pulse X outrunning Pulse, or the flippening can happen sooner rather than later. But at the moment, I maintain my position that Pulse Chain is going to do better just because that is the L1, right? It's the name that people are going to have the most familiarity with. It is the token that they use to transact on the platform, right? On the L1. And so if we were to use past history as any point of reference, we know that L1s do significantly, and the exchange tokens, not so much, even though they still do as well, right? But can Pulse X outperform Pulse Chain in the long run? Absolutely, because it has what other L1s don't, and they don't have that buy and burn feature, right? And that's not considering any other features that Richard might add in the future. Right? Because we've spoken about this prior, Pulse X is a very, very bare bones DEX, the way that Richard likes it, which is inevitably going to push some advanced players out because they don't have the toys that they're used to playing with, like the V3 liquidity pool that you find in something like Uniswap. So that's the short and sweet of it on my end. Potentially, Pulse X flips Pulse Chain, but yet to be determined.
Cool.
All right, so we've talked a little bit about some of the Richard Hart tokens here, and yes, PulseX, very bare bone. Jay, I agree with you. I think both of them have their own time in the sun to shine. They're going to be on slightly different timelines, and that's without the X factors of what Richard Hart can do for the market, what the OA can do, and to say nothing of additional adoption and like that we can bring into this. So certainly as a community, we need to continue to onboard people into the Pulse Chain ecosystem, onboard them into crypto, get them looking at some of these products and explain the utility and use cases of those items.
Yeah.
So we're going to get moving here and let's say move on to one of the topics I started on my earlier stream today. And I'm going to come back to it for those of you who tuned in, talking about some of the AI stuff. I know I was chatting with Boogie last night about some AI stuff, and AI is getting crazy out there. It's you can't believe stuff on screen anymore. I don't know if anyone eyeballed Sora. I'll pull up a brief video for them here momentarily. It is really something to behold on that front. So when you look down here, none of this is real. This is all synthetically generated. It's kind of mind-blowing. You look at some of these different elements here. Like, okay, when was the last time you saw a woolly mammoth traipsing about? Okay, I get it. This racer here in the salt flats, pretty wild. This historic California town in the gold rush. You know, Hollywood's got to be on watch for this. Now, I find it interesting and intriguing for amateur content creators as they gain access to these tools. We are potentially getting to a point where we're just going to be limited by our imagination to make these things. But you can't trust screens. I think that's it. I think it's official. I think we've left it behind. So along those lines, let's take a look at one of the tokens I was talking about a little bit earlier today, Ajax. And so I started to explain how I came across this token about a year ago. I was looking for some AI narrative plays because ChatGPT 3 was really just starting to take off in the news. And I said, okay, let me just kind of eyeball as an opportunity to capitalize and maybe cultivate some crypto like Charlie often preaches with some of these side plays and the like, and exposing a minority of my capital to it in order to just make some gains. Well, I actually held on to the damn thing and staked it just somewhat on a hunch, somewhat based on additional research. What I want to call people's attention to here is this circulating supply. And it was even less last year. 62.83. That kind of gets right into that zone for me where I'm thinking, hey, I don't know if I really want to throw something at this. There's potentially some level of inflationary supply here. So I kept digging, and let's say some of the other stuff I was eyeballing at that point in time was stuff like Fetch, this other token, VAI, which is a licensed financial product through Malta. Vi does like an AI contract bot on that. And I looked at a few different things. I ultimately decided to park some cash in Singularity Net. And how did I come to that conclusion? Well, who's the team? What's their history? Dr. Ben Gortzel and David Hansen, they partnered previously at Hansen Robotics. If you haven't seen the Sophia bot, it's worth an eyeball, taking a look at some stuff. And then as I was flipping through, looking for more research on the tokenomics and the like, and for anyone who's looking at historic charts, I do want to acknowledge they initially launched as AGI and they had a hard fork, and that's when they became Ajax as far as a token ticker. They somewhat recently also launched on their Cardano network with staking on Cardano, going to a more multi-chain future. For anyone who's seen some of my earlier streams, I've long been arguing, well, for all of 2 weeks at least publicly arguing, that we are moving towards a multi-chain future. And I think you'll see aspects of specialization where, oh, this chain handles this type of performance better, put this component of our tech stack or our product over here. This works better as a settlement layer. This is more universally distributed. And you'll see no different than application development where you can leverage different components of technology to make a product or solution where the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. I'm not saying Ajax is the one to do it. I am saying I made an effort to capitalize on the narrative, and a year later it looked like the right play for me. So let me talk a little bit about some of the other things I potentially had to consider on this. Again, initially I got hung up on was token supply. And my analogy here is it's somewhat like the OA in certain respects, and there's a major holding held back. So initially I had some concerns about the inflationary pressure on that. But if you actually look at the overall chart, you can see that they're released the ERC20 stuff was out or swapped on a one-to-one basis for their prior AGI fork on that. And then you can see the AGI ADA, which is really the Cardano side, is blooming over time. So initially, the worst inflationary pressures will be now, but proportionally as a percentage impact, it diminishes over time. It's like a 90 to 100 year unlock schedule. So as you start getting closer to 2030, again, that inflationary supply starts to taper off gradually year over year. So again, I parked some money in there. Why did I park it in there? I think that's an important part of the
Twinkie,
yeah.
question.
Sure.
Real quick. Their vesting period is over 100 years?
Yes.
What the hell? Okay, well, I can see
That's
I
some
can see
optimism.
why you're not as worried about the inflation if their vesting schedule is over 100 freaking years.
Yep.
That's
Capping-
wild, bro.
Capping it at 2 billion, span 91 years. 91 years.
That's hilarious. Oh my, that's hilarious, bro. Oh, okay, go on. I just thought that
No
was
worries,
so
no
funny.
worries, man. Great question, right? But my stance here is, if I was just looking at circulating supply, I would have initially ruled it out. I would have made a snap judgment, and I would have been wrong. So spend a little elbow grease sometimes, folks, and just take a slightly deeper look at some things. And then in my case, again, I'm slightly cherry picking on this one. It ended up working out okay for me in the grand scheme of things. So what are some of the other things they've got going on? Well, they are really pushing for decentralized AI, and they are talking about trying to be a next-gen decentralized AI solution. And if you actually poke around their overall ecosystem, they have a number of partnerships and the like. I won't bore everyone with the details on this stream. At the end of the day, what they are doing is setting up aspects of effectively decentralized AI bots. So you might have the Agent J bot where you like plug it in and say, hey, do all my Elliott wave analysis. You might have your Boogie bot where you say, do all my Fibonacci analysis and tell me which fragrance of the day I should wear tonight when I go on my date. And you might have the Twinkie bot where it's like, all right, tell me all the back end nonsense and like fine details that people are chatting about on the internet or that get overlooked. So aside from that, the Ajax token, they use it also to pay some of their projects out, but you have to hit certain milestones in your projects to get that funding through Ajax. Additionally, it is one of their, I'm going to call it like their carnival token, where they use it within the confines of the ecosystem. So if you want to play in the Ajax space, you have to have Ajax tokens to fund certain things. Also, what they're building out is the ability for some of these different AI bots to work amongst themselves and each other. So it's not even like a human has to necessarily prompt it. You could summon the Twinkie bot to do the thing. The Twinkie bot hits the limits of what it can do, summons the Agent J bot, pays the Agent J bot, and then potentially you as the creator of the Agent J bot get paid out on some of its transactions. AKA, I'll call a spade a spade. It's digital enslavement of your AI lackey, and you're getting paid on it.
Me6 on top of a Me6.
Yes. And check out their blog. They keep the stuff up to date. There's that one of those creepy ass bots. In this case, it's the Grace robot on that. Let's see here.
Dude, you know damn well they're aiming for sex robots, bro.
Yeah. You know what?
They're gonna push for that limit, dog. You know what I'm saying?
Digital pimp on this stuff. Yeah. So let me acknowledge a few other folks we got rolling through chat here. We got a dude named Chad that I don't think I actually know, but appreciate the support here. Chad is a Chad. If you're here, you're going to make it. Oh, before I forget here, one of the thoughts popped in, when we were talking earlier about things like FTX suppressing prices and then getting wiped out. I would like to point out for everyone who's still hanging around in chat, if you have hung around through this bear market, at this point in time, you have outlasted FTX, Celsius, Three Arrows Capital, and Voyager. Congratulations. You have more patience and better risk management than they do. You win.
Yep.
Coming back around to some of this Ajax stuff here.
Twinkie, it was hella scary riding this freaking dip storm that we went into, bro. Last stream, bro, I was telling freaking Sloth, bro, I was scared shitless buying pulse chain at the bottom, bro. You know what I'm saying?
Yep. Yeah, but like Sailor says, you got to have that conviction, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm all in crypto. I'm not all in on one crypto. I'm all in on crypto. One of the other things I want to call out here is that people may not be aware of. The Ajax team, SingularityNet, did form a partnership with Fetch late last year to investigate and troubleshoot hallucinations in AI and AI conclusions and like assorted data sets. What is a hallucination? Basically, like a false conclusion or incorrect conclusion. In one case, I think like somebody asked one of the AIs to research an article and it falsely and incorrectly labeled some dude a sex offender. It was just a bogus conclusion. So they formed a partnership to help troubleshoot those type of hallucinations. And ultimately, those things are unacceptable when it comes to medical diagnoses, financial services, and news reporting, which unfortunately hampered tremendously this one individual on it. So just because you plug in an AI and it spits out an answer, don't assume it's the truth. Anyway, I see we got a few other folks rolling through chat. Paul Sachs, my man, what's going on? The ability to accomplish tasks at 1/100th of the time and effort has been a huge value add. Let's see, Nate chatting with some of the folks, and certainly in DGen Roundtable chat and some other backdoor channels we've had. Yeah,
Backdoor channels.
yeah, for sure, man. If you know, you know. If you get on Telegram, if you're not on Telegram, that's where all the spicy stuff is.
Hey, breaking news: Ethereum just hit a new cycle high. Right here, live during our first.
Shows the chart. Shows the chart.
Yeah. Jay, you got a chart for us, man? You want to show? You want to show?
Yeah. Let me go ahead and share it real quick, just real quick for the folks to see. This is absolutely beautiful. We have a new high here on day 33, and so what does that mean? You can expect Ethereum, and I'm assuming Bitcoin is going to follow. It's so rare that we ever say that, right? That Bitcoin is going to follow Ethereum, but this might be the case, right? Bitcoin has been moving sideways. Ethereum is moving up. So we can expect this to last anywhere between another 14 to 21 days. So look for Ethereum to keep looking for new highs all the way up until day 50 before it starts to come down, right? So I love it, man. Happened right here live on stream. Right translated cycle for Ethereum. So that is very, very exciting. Very exciting, especially for the alts, man. Especially for Pulse Chain and others.
Hell yeah. So, all right. Thanks for the late breaking news there, or immediately breaking news. I guess, maybe it's a sign of the combined powers here of Adobo, Tamales, and Soju. But as we're approaching the home stretch of tonight's stream, Boogie, I need to summon your technical wizardry skills for a little chart action on some Ajax stuff. So what are you seeing right now in those charts?
Yeah, absolutely, man. Mind you, I had seen Ajax, bro. You had mentioned the project to me, and then I went to go check it out on CoinGecko, and I saw the value at about 90 cents. And every chart that I went through on TradingView, I think had a high of about 55 cents, give or take. I couldn't find the one at 90 cents. And I think it's because you had mentioned they ended up doing what with the Ajax?
They had a hard fork.
Yeah.
They used to be AGI. They rotated to AGX. So realistically, for anyone who's getting in now, while the past potentially is a future, let's say a future reference as a possibility, again, we're all in this space. We know the inherently speculative aspects of crypto. I don't think anyone's expecting a magic bullet. I put my money where my mouth was as I put single-digit percentages into this a year ago. So let's potentially see where it can go. Certainly, I think when I eyeballed it earlier today, it was like 70 to 80 cents and looking fairly strong relative to prior performance. So what are you seeing right now?
Yeah, man. Ajax has a shitload of support down here, man, from the 17 cents range to about the 25-cent range. We did pump up pretty damn hard these past few days. Jay, I tried running fucking 20-day cycles on this sucker, dude, and it is not consistent. It's one of those tokens that sometimes has 20-day cycles, sometimes it doesn't. Yeah. But I am noticing that it is overheated, hence why you're probably starting to see why it pierced up over here. We got a red candle, and now we're on a green candle. Immediate area of support that I do have on the weekly is at about 64 cents. I love to see scaffolding. And for you cats that don't know, a lot of the noobs and the boots that have no idea what scaffolding means, I love to see the value. Let me grab my drawing tool to go up, then come down, to go up, and then come down, go up, and come down, because we create that support resistance. Here, on the other hand, it's a little bit like an ascending scallop, and it's just going to the upside. Now, the badass thing about that, though, if I was to immediately see this and not see the whole freaking picture of Ajax, I would think that it would just come crashing down to the downside really hard. But we do have these areas of support over here. Let me go ahead and zoom in so you guys can see. And you can see that we have these conglomerate of candles acting as an immediate area of support. And you could basically draw up like a rectangular box here and push it this way. Bear with me, cats. And if I push it this way, this would be as well as an area of support. So it may be that when it does come down, it'll probably go halfway through and then come back up. Now, you did mention, I think, I don't have the CoinGecko site on, but our high on this token was at about 92 cents, give or take. It'll probably continue pumping to the upside, if anything, especially with that data that you just dropped on us, Jay. You know what I'm saying? And with what you stated, Twinkie, I did notice that when you were showing the chart on that, it is an ERC20, but it's also on the Cardano network. You know what I'm saying?
Correct. Yep.
So I do think it'll probably continue rallying to the upside. But one thing I am noticing on the RSI is that we are overheated. I think that's the most overheated we've been on its current history. Of course, we're not taking into account the old chart. And I don't think we'd be able to count it because this is in itself probably a new token because it was re-released the way you mentioned it, right?
Correct. Yeah. Hard forked, airdropped 1-to-1.
Yeah. So I think it'll probably come back down a little bit and then continue bouncing up. Now, let me show you what I mean by that on the chart. So it'll probably, let me take my drawing tool here. It'll probably come back down here and then it'll continue going up, continuing to develop that scaffolding. Now, if I only had this portion of the chart, then I would be a little bit skeptical. But since we do have this area of support, I think we're going to be good to go on it.
Okay, yeah, bro. This chart
Jay,
is looking, bro. This chart is looking bullish as hell. However, the caveat is because it has already run so significantly to the upside. If I was going to make a recommendation to myself, I would not recommend to Agent J to invest in this token right now because of how hard and how fast it has run. If I can share my chart here real quick, because I also have it pulled up. I do love the structure that this chart has taken, right? This looks like an Elliott wave pattern forming, right? Double bottom here at around 15 cents. There's your wave 1. There's your wave 2. Wave 3 trying to come in. 4 yet to come in. 5 yet to come in. If this price were to keep going to the upside, we could do a very simple extension tool from the start of our wave 1 to the top and pull it to the bottom of our wave 2. You can see here that it's already trying to find resistance at that 2618 area. Very common extension for wave 3s is all the way up here to 3618 and 4236, between $1.01 and $1.14. Now, if we were to come down, its prior all-time high this is after it was forked, will serve as support. If you could see, that is also, you have some fibs here, which will serve as support, the 1618 fib. And that is around 58 cents, or call it 59 cents, right? Currently, that's where that support is going to be, which is where I expect the wave 4, once it starts to come in, to head back down to touch this horizontal line of support and bounce back into its wave 5. As long as AGIX does not go below the top of this wave 1, let's just see where the top of that wave 1 was. It is at 36 cents, 0.36734. As long as it does not crack this area here, then this Elliott wave structure will hold. So even though this chart is relatively new after it was forked, right? Like Twinkie said, you have to take into consideration all of its past price history before it was forked. And even just looking at this now, this is a very, very clean looking chart. Very clean looking chart. But like Boogie mentioned, because of how oversold it is here on the daily, this is probably not something that you would do very well to invest into right now. It is way too bullish at the moment. Way too bullish.
Thanks, gentlemen, for that analysis. At the same time, I am looking for some exit liquidity. So if anyone would like to buy, let me know. We can certainly have a conversation. All right, so we've been going out for a little over 90 minutes. I want to say thank you very much to our special guests this evening, Agent J and Crypto Boogie. It's been a delight having you guys on. Turns out, I guess the green candles, the gains work out for Ethereum, so I'm just going to have to, start getting more of them, I suppose, in the grand scheme of things. But as far as people tracking you down, following you, wanting to continue to learn from you, be it on YouTube or through other aspects of the community, where can these guys find you? Agent J, if we're looking for you, where can we find you?
So you guys can find me on my socials underscore P90 Hex on Twitter and on Instagram at agent underscore J Schroth. I don't post a lot of crypto content in Instagram. That's more for my like fitness clients. I'm a powerlifting coach. That was my first business. Well, still is my business. So that's mostly for my fitness clients and powerlifting clients. So all of my crypto content you can find on YouTube at the DGen Round Table. We also have a Telegram that you can join. It is free currently. And if you guys would like to bounce ideas off of people like Twinkie, people like Boogie, you go ahead and join that Telegram because there's a lot of helpful guys and gals in that chat that are willing to bounce ideas with each other. It doesn't matter if you are a beginner, intermediate, or expert. You're going to find somebody there to collaborate at your level and advance. Everybody's always willing to help each other. So please go ahead and join our Telegram chat. Subscribe to our YouTube channel at the DGen Roundtable. We have a show every single Sunday, every single Wednesday. And who knows? Like we've been doing streams so much over the past few months that it's like, well, we're probably going to end up streaming at least 3-4 times a week. But yeah, that's where you can find us, man. DGen Roundtable at YouTube and our Telegram channel.
Sounds good. Boogie, where can we
yeah,
find
monkeys.
you?
Well, with that stated, definitely join the Telegram chat with these cats, or join the doggone Citadel. One thing about Moon Gangers, and we are Moon Gangers here, we were developed by Charlie and Miguel, is that we are not assholes when we're trying to teach you shit. You know what I'm saying? We're cool about that, and we're cool if you ask us noob questions. We may disagree on some things here and there, but that's always the case, and that's how we freaking end up evolving in the future. As far as I go, this is my link tree. You can find my OnlyFans here. I take off my mask. I'm joking, cats. Ain't no OnlyFans in there, man. But you can definitely find my links there for freaking YouTube, which is US crypto underscore boogie. Same thing for Twitter, US crypto underscore boogie. But for Instagram, it's just crypto underscore boogie. Hit me up. You guys can definitely ask me questions, and I'll try to help you guys out.
All right. Thanks again to our guests. Thanks to our viewers for tuning in this evening. I had a great time doing this. We'll have to do it again in the future. Hope everyone has a wonderful evening, and we'll see you all soon.